There's a moment when the room feels a little colder than it should. Nothing changed. The air is the same. The people are the same. But something inside you pulls back, not sharply, not in panic, just enough to notice. You still hear the words. You still nod. You still respond at the right time. Yet the sound lands differently, as if it has to travel farther to reach you. It's uncomfortable, not painful, just off, like standing a step behind yourself. At first, it feels like tiredness, a long day, too much noise, too many small impressions stacked without rest. But that's not the part most people notice. What they see is calm, composure, control. They see someone who doesn't react the way they used to, someone steady, someone less shaken, and there's a quiet relief in that for everyone. You don't ask for space. You simply take less in. There's something quieter happening underneath. You stop leaning forward emotionally. You stop reaching before you're asked. You stop filling the silence with concern, not because you don't care, but because caring has started to feel heavier than before. You don't talk about it. There isn't language for it yet. You just notice that you no longer feel pulled toward people's moods. You can sense them, but they don't enter you the same way. That's where it starts to change. At first, it feels like relief, a soft exhale you didn't know you were holding. The constant scanning eases. The emotional noise dims. You can sit in a room and not absorb everything. You can listen without losing your balance. But then something else follows. A small distance, barely visible. You laugh, but the laugh ends sooner. You listen, but your chest stays quiet. You respond, but something stays untouched. It's subtle enough to ignore. So you do. You tell yourself you're just more grounded now, more contained. That sounds like growth. It looks like maturity. But that's not the whole story. There's an unfamiliar stillness where warmth used to move. Not gone, just farther away. You don't ache the same way. You don't feel pulled apart by other people's pain. And for a while, that feels like strength. You move through conversations without getting tangled. You leave interactions without replaying them all night. But then you notice something else. You don't feel as reached either. Compliments pass through. Affection lands gently and slides off. Nothing sticks. You don't miss people when they leave the room the way you once did. You don't feel the same anticipation before seeing them again. Not numb, just distant. And that distance feels earned. After all, you didn't choose to be affected so deeply before. It just happened. You noticed everything. The shift in tone, the hesitation behind words, the unsaid weight people carried. You held it quietly, constantly, but that's not the part most people notice. They don't see the accumulation, the way every emotional signal added up. They don't feel the way your system never fully rested, even in stillness. They don't sense how often you stayed open when closing would have been easier. So when the distance appears, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like balance, at least at first. You begin to trust the space. It keeps you upright. It keeps you from sinking into things that aren't yours. You become more selective with your attention, more reserved with your reactions. People adjust. Some lean in harder, some step back. You remain calm, observant. But there's a quiet question forming beneath all of this. Why does this calm feel heavier than expected? It's not anxiety. It's not sadness. It's a muted weight, like holding something fragile behind glass. You're aware of it, but you can't touch it. There's something quieter happening underneath. You're no longer surprised by people. You already know where things will go. You see patterns early. You sense endings before they arrive. So you don't invest the same way. You keep a small distance just in case. That distance feels intelligent, protective, but it also flattens certain moments. The joy doesn't rush in as fast. The connection doesn't linger as long. And you tell yourself, this is the cost of being aware. You stop expecting to be met fully, not consciously, just quietly. And when expectations soften, disappointment does too. That feels like progress. But there's a subtle trait happening. You feel less hurt and also less moved, less shaken, and also less stirred. This isn't something you decide. It unfolds. One interaction at a time, one moment of restraint after another. And somewhere along the way, sensitivity changes its shape. It becomes watchfulness, then distance. But that's not the part most people notice. They see composure. They see someone who doesn't need much. They don't see how much you're holding back. They don't feel the restraint required to stay the steady. They don't notice the moments you almost step forward emotionally, then stop because you've learned something without naming it yet. You learned that openness had a cost, not because it was wrong, but because it was constant. And now, halfway between closeness and retreat, something becomes clear. The distance didn't come from coldness. It came from precision, from knowing too much, from feeling too deeply for too long without pause. Sensitivity didn't disappear, it folded inward. You didn't become less affected. You became more careful about where the effect lands. That's the realization. The space you feel isn't emptiness, it's containment. Your system learned to protect itself not by hardening, but by narrowing access. You still feel everything, just not out loud. Just not immediately. The distance is not indifference, it's filtering, and that's where the weight comes from. Because filtering requires effort, constant, quiet effort. You're always adjusting, always monitoring the boundary between what you allow in and what you keep out. Before things flowed through you freely, now they stop at the door. That door keeps you safe and alone at times. This isn't a flaw, it's a response, a system that learned from overload. But there's something bittersweet about it. The world feels less sharp, less overwhelming, and also less vivid. You notice beauty, but it doesn't pierce you the way it once did. You connect, but you don't dissolve into it. You remain intact. That integrity matters. But sometimes you miss the intensity, not the pain, the aliveness. You miss being surprised by how deeply something could touch you. Now you sense the impact before it arrives. So you brace gently, and the moment passes with less force. There's something quieter happening underneath, a mourning you don't quite name, not for people, for a way of feeling. A version of yourself that didn't know how to hold back, that version felt more and paid for it. This version feels safer and wonders what was lost. Neither is wrong. This shift didn't happen because you failed. It happened because you adapted. Sensitivity learned to survive by stepping back, and emotional distance became the space where you could finally breathe. But breathing at a distance changes the sound of things. Voices feel softer. Laughter doesn't echo as long. And silence becomes easier to sit with. You don't rush to fill it anymore. That's not emptiness. That's restraint. There's a quiet strength in that. And a quiet ache. Both can exist. You don't need to return to who you were. And you don't need to erase who you are now. This awareness doesn't ask for change. It simply lets you see the shape of what happened. The day sensitivity turned inward. The day closeness learned to pause. Not as a rejection of feeling, but as a way to hold it without breaking. And when you notice that distance now, you might feel less confused by it. Not resolved, just understood. It's not the absence of care. It's care that learned to stand back quietly, patiently, waiting for moments that feel safe enough to step closer again.